Hello, welcome back. So in this lecture, we are going to understand some key concept. We will start with the database. We will discuss what is database. Then we will discuss what is data warehouse, why we should use data warehouse. Also, we will discuss what is data lake. Then we will try to cover what is Delta Lake and Lakehouse. So let's start with the database. Now, if you want to master Data Factory, which is a unified platform for data engineering and data analysis and data science, you could check out our paid course in Udemy. I will share the discounted link, and if you are interested, you could check out that. So let's start with the database. Now, most of you already familiarized with this kind of technology, say database. So assume you are working for Amazon, and at the beginning, say at the time of Amazon started, they might be using a simple database and some web application. So they will be using some website, say amazon.com, and some database. Inside this database, they will be storing the data related to product and customer in a structured manner. They will define a table, and inside the table, they will store the data in a systematic manner. And once they grown, or once they started to expand into different country, they will add more database. And based on the requirement, they will add more database, and the system was working fine. But soon they started to face some issues. So let's start with the definition. A database is a system that stores structured data, and we could use it for small scale analytics. Example is MySQL, PostgreSQL, SQL Server. Now the limitation is we will have very limited capacity to analyze our data. So once Amazon grown and many customers started to use, it's become very difficult to analyze the customer pattern and demand. So what they did is they introduced data warehouse, or company started to introduce data warehouse. And with the help of ETL technology, they will load relevant data into data warehouse, and they will process the data and store historical data. Maybe they will load the entire data once in a month, or they will load the entire historical data once in a week into data warehouse. Then they will perform the transformation, and they will create some fact tables and dimension tables. And by using this data, they will visualize the data. They will use some reporting tool like Tableau or ClickView or Power BI to analyze this data. So initially we have SSRS. So similar kind of tools we use to analyze our historical data. Now it was working fine for few years, but over the year systems or demand changed. So data warehouse is a centralized system mainly designed for analytical purpose and reporting. Example is Amazon Redshift, Snowflake, Azure Synapse Analytics, and mainly we use this data for analyze purpose. And it works with structured data only, and the limitation is it's very expensive. Similarly, it's very difficult to manage real-time data and semi-structured data. But over the time, the requirement will change. Maybe once we introduce social medias, or once we introduce IoT device, the requirement is changed. Now what happened? We need to store massive amount of data. Now we need to store massive amount of data if you are using social medias and other online systems, because they generate very large amount of data. And to store this data in a cost-effective manner, we introduce data lake. So data lake support different types of file format. You could store image, videos, semi-structured data, CSV files, anything you could dump inside data lake. And it's very cost-effective, and it provides many good features compared to database and data warehouse. And it also comes with many disadvantages, mainly with the data quality and consistency. Database provides one of the very high quality feature called consistency. But inside data lake, we don't have that feature. and the data quality is also very low compared to database and data warehouse. So what we have done is we introduce another file system. So how we used to manage our data, or how we used to manage our things inside kitchen. Similarly, we store our data inside Azure Data Lake, but we added one advanced file system or a technology called Delta Lake. So our data will be reside inside storage system called Data Lake, and we added additional feature called Delta Lake. Now with the help of Data Lake and Delta Lake, introduce consistency inside our data lake. So if you want to store some data inside data lake, you could use Delta Lake, and it will store your data inside data lake as a Parquet format. Along with that, it will store some additional log details. So now you can update, delete and query your data even though it's in your data lake. So how we used to update our data inside our database, similar options are possible with the introduction of Delta Lake. Now what is Lakehouse? So it's a architecture with the help of Delta Lake. Now in the case of Lakehouse, we combine the benefit of Data Lake as well as data warehouse, because we have a Delta Lake technology that help you to store your data inside Delta Lake, but also provide the feature of all the database capabilities. So you could store your data inside your data lake, and you could make it as a database. So you will get the benefit of data warehouse as well as Delta Lake with the architecture, new architecture called Lakehouse. Now in the case of Lakehouse, if you store some data, you will be storing your data inside data lake along with some additional metadata. Now you could create two types of table inside Lakehouse. One is managed table and another one is external table. So before discussing managed table and external table, let's summarize what we discussed so far. So we have database, which is structured data, ideal for daily operation. Then in order to analyze our historical data, we introduce data warehouse. Then we have data lake, which help us to store massive amount of data in a cost-effective manner. Now with the help of data lake, you could store massive amount of data, but the data quality is reduced. Now we introduced Delta Lake technology to improve the quality of our data lake. Now you could create tables even though data stored inside data lake. Now there is an architecture that combine both the feature of data lake and data warehouse, and we call this architecture Lakehouse. Inside Fabric, we will use Lakehouse a lot. Now if someone asks you what is meant by Lakehouse, it's very simple. A Lakehouse is an architecture that combines the best features of data warehouse and data lake. Now inside Lakehouse, you could create tables, and there are two types of table you could create. One is managed table and another one is external table. So let's start with the managed table. In the case of managed table, if you store some data, the data will be stored inside default directory of Delta Lake engine. So your data and the table definition, everything will be managed by Delta Lake engine. So you could create a table, and the data as well as the table definition, everything will be managed by Delta Lake engine. Now if you execute a drop table statement, what will happen? Your table will get deleted as well as the data, because data and table definition, everything is managed by our engine. Now it is ideal. So some scenario we will use managed table. Now there is external table is there. Now in the case of external table, in both case, even though if it is a managed table or external table, data will be stored inside data lake. But who will manage it? In the case of managed table, Delta Lake engine will manage the data as well as table definition. But in the case of external table, user will manage the data and Delta Lake engine will manage the table definition. So if you want to store your data in your specified location, you could use external table. So you could use external table and you could store your data inside anywhere in the data lake. Now, if you want to create additional table definition, you could execute a single code with the help of location. You could specify from which location you want to use this data. Then the table definition will get created. Now, if you delete the table definition just get deleted. The data will be there. You need to manually delete your data. But in the previous case, if you store some data in a managed way, you don't need to specify the location. Delta Lake engine will manage the location where it is going to store. Now, if you execute the statement, the table and the table definition and data, everything will be managed by Delta Lake engine, and the data will be saved inside Data Lake, but it will be managed by Delta Lake engine. Now, once you delete it, your table definition and data also get deleted. Now we will try to learn how we could create managed tables and external tables in the upcoming lecture. So that's all for this video. Thanks for watching.